Hey guys, well, we got a Halloween trailer. That's right, and everybody's been talking about it. It's been all over the web, gushing with millions of views and people going crazy about it, so I'm going to jump right into my thoughts. First of all, what I liked about the trailer is that it has a really good Halloween vibe to it. It feels genuine, it feels like it's telling a good story, and it doesn't feel as much like a cash grab as some of the last films. I think the presentation is great. We've got the documentary style approach in the beginning of the film to orient to newcomers, and I think that's effective, and I also think it's a different way to approach the introduction to The Shape in 2018. And I think it's a very useful means of doing so, because the original is a 40-year-old movie now, and we're making a 40-year later sequel. That's a good way to go at it. And also I think the development they're showing of the Laurie Strode character, she's very believable in that she's a withered older woman who has been traumatized by this event 40 years ago, clearly, and has been preparing for it in almost a paranoid way. And she's packing heat. She's got some firepower and looks like she's got her own little cleared up backyard. But this is also affecting her family members, her daughter, her granddaughter. And I think this shows how this trauma has branched out over 40 years and how there needs to be some closure to it. And it's not very much unlike H2O, but I think they're taking a little bit further of an approach with Jamie Lee Curtis's character this time, in which H2O, she was traumatized, but she had left behind that life and tried to drown it out with booze, which I think was a good angle. But in this angle, she's just been preparing herself, kind of like in End of the World preparee who builds a bomb shelter. Now she's packing heat, waiting for the Shape to come back. And I think that's a great kind of outline of the plot and of the character development that's gone on in these 40 years. Also, I just like the aesthetic approach that they took to Haddonfield. Charleston, South Carolina looks very convincing. I like the Halloween look to it. The teenagers seem very relatable. They seem real. They don't seem like these cookie cutter, cut-out cliches that come in every horror sequel that we've seen over the last 30 years. They seem real, and they seem like they have real conversations, and they're not pretty over-the-top supermodel actors or actresses. These are real people and, kind of normies, and that's good. That's convincing. Also, I just like the vibe of the trailer. I like that they use the original theme, and I like that they bring it back to its roots and really give it this just Halloween feel that I think has really been missing from a lot of the films since, I would argue, H2O. And even then, that had kind of this Scream feel to it. I'm kind of rambling in that, so let me move on. I also liked some of the Easter eggs they put in this. In particular, I loved the trick-or-treaters with the silver shamrock masks. You can see it for all of 0.5 seconds, but it's awesome. And I hope we see better glimpses of it in the movie, because that's a gem. That movie is a gem that needs to be recognized, and who knows, maybe it can have its own incarnation after this one. That's my hope, at least. So, what else did I like about this movie? Well, I generally liked that it showed a lot without showing too much. The new mask of The Shape, actually looks really good. It looks like a withered version of that original mask, and it's pretty convincing. It looks very different from how they first teased it in that new poster. And the full-on look is actually quite convincing. And I think his name was Chris Nelson, who did the mask. Great job. And it's just convincing. And The Shape doesn't look too big. It doesn't look too boxy like in previous sequels. This one, he looks very convincing. But that's where I'm going to take a turn and say I need to go to some things I didn't like about this. Because people have been gushing about this trailer. And as good as it looks, and as good as the trailer is, there's a couple things in it that I think people are looking over for the sake of favoritism toward this movie. And I'm somebody who is incredibly excited for this movie. But here's the thing. The very first thing we see is the documentarians going into this insane asylum to approach The Shape and show him his mask and try to get a reaction out of him. Now, the overall layout of this outside facility at the asylum is really cool and kind of spooky and kind of 70s in its aesthetic vibe. But the problem is that when they present him, you don't see his face, but you see him standing out there, bounded up by chains, in a big open environment, and they speak to him like a person. And that adds a human element to this movie that I'm afraid they might have added. I know Danny McBride and David Gordon Green really wanted to give a grounded kind of approach to this film, and that's great because the original film also has that approach. But we also have the allure of this boogeyman type figure, and Loomis tells us from the beginning, this is no guy, this is no person. And I'm afraid the presentation they give, at least in this new one, is he's just a guy. And that's just not very convincing to me, and it just doesn't really bode well with me when the aesthetic is, or the approach is just, he's a man, because there's a lot more to it than that. They even reference the boogeyman in this trailer, and that's where my other kind of criticism of this trailer comes into light. Yeah, so we bring up the whole boogeyman aspect. Laurie says you should believe in the boogeyman. But the problem here is when you see Michael Myers or the shape in this trailer, he's out in the open, he's pretty well lit, and maybe they were just showing money shots to give us an idea of how he would look, but there's no kind of shadowy, elusive figure that he was in the original film presented in this trailer. Now, that was a big part of the original film, and why I said in my previous video why Dean Cundey wasn't brought back for this. That was a huge part of the original film. This figure that was called the Shape and is Michael Myers was shrouded in darkness and very elusive, very suggestive. People walked by him on the street and couldn't see him in the shadows in the film. When you saw him far off, he was very suggestive, just a shadow, just a shape, and nothing too human-like. Only the shape of a human, but very elusive and just hidden in the darkness and operating in the darkness. And I think that was very, very effective in the original film and one of the pioneering traits of the original film. This trailer doesn't have it. He's very out in the open, or maybe not out in the open per se, but easily seen and not shown as this kind of elusive or suggestive figure. Those are going to kind of be the tropes of my video: elusive, suggestive, shadowy, and so on and so on. But to really have that boogeyman style of allure, I think you need to capture that. And I think that's something that needs to be emphasized in the film. And maybe they're just showing the money shots of the suit and the mask and everything, so I can let it go for now. But I hope that's not the case in the final film. You need to photograph this right, and you need to shoot this right for it to be convincing. Cinematography is huge for these kinds of films. And if it's very procedural and not taken seriously with how to properly light the Shape or Michael Myers, or how to keep you on edge and not know what's in the shadows, that's going to be a detriment to the suspense of the film. And so those were my two really big kind of critiques for this trailer. But overall, I did like it a lot. I think there was a lot to like here, and I think it gave us a lot to look forward to. It tells a good story, it seems. It looks like it has some great moments of sting, like when he drops the teeth into the stall where Ryan Reese's character is hiding. Very kind of extreme in that sense, but still convincing, in line with how the Shape in the original film had this kind of sick fun with his victims. So that was good, and I just think that we're getting a film that does respect the original a lot and does respect the nuances of filmmaking for this kind of film. But again, they just need to make sure this is photographed right. I would love to see the darkness aspect and the boogeyman aspect really emphasized in the final film, but I think this gave us a lot of great material to look forward to. The actors and the actresses look very convincing, and I'm excited, okay? So I just want to open up the floor now for you guys. Are my critiques out of place? Do you think they're not very welcome? Do you think they're reasonable? Just my opinion. I could be wrong. But why don't we sound off on this? Thanks again for watching, guys. Comment below and I'll respond to you. Alright, guys. Talk to you later.